All right, this is another video, and my thing here is just continuously put things in perspective. I have this perp, and this perp is just so nasty because she tries to make me accept things that I know that I'll never accept because I know it's falsified, right? And of course, the humiliations of what I know and how I've been validated in so many levels as they try to manipulate even my memories to try to create a pattern of what they create themselves is what they do, right? The validations are just beyond, it's just too much. There's no amount of gaslighting that's gonna make me like just dismiss it. And there's no amount of manipulations that's gonna make me subscribe to this thing. Even earlier they were trying to make me subscribe to this false memory of something they did earlier on when my friend was with his new girlfriend who had a little daughter, who's his daughter now, but his baby very adorable, and they were making me experience when I was seeing her getting the sexual stimulation they make me have today. It's to falsify things, but that's what they do. They can do these things. Memories are manipulated, and you get new versions of memories with stimulations that weren't there naturally and now are there when you think about it. I talked about memories being manipulated then, and they're still doing it, and this is one of the first things that I knew. Was like, oh my gosh, that's for sure. Now I understand that they make me experience memories differently. And since that day, it was just like, okay, they're doing something to my memory somehow. They're not being validated to find out that they do this pedophilia type of torture, and they do manipulate memories. And you'll hear it. But you see a picture there of somebody. They're not my friend, but they were friends of somebody I used to date. And they have the picture of them with this little girl, and what you're gonna expect, the pedophilia type of torture they've done to others. Nothing new. This is what they do. They're gonna be doing that every time I look at little girls, any kids, matter of fact, but especially little girls, and they're gonna try to make you feel guilty. That's the nasty things they do. They think if they put pressure or make you, feel guilty about the things they manipulate you to experience, you're gonna subscribe to, or identify to it. I don't. Matter of fact, I'm making sure that I want them to dumb themselves down as much as they can, as much as they can. Like, I don't want them to I want them to continuously use the most illogical perps. If you're gonna escape, I want you to dumb yourself down to that escapism. I don't want you to. There's no coming up from this, and they, to try to disorient me, because it's obvious they do the pedophilia type of torture, right? You hear these people talking about what they do. To disorient me and to try to somewhat escape from the obviousness that they do the pedophilia type of torture. They tell me how I'm going to get raped and tortured and whatever. It's like, okay, well, you do the pedophilia type of torture, so whatever happens, what happens. And like I said, this thing feels biblical, because not only you do the pedophilia type of torture, not only do you manipulate people in these nasty ways. You create these disturbing, disgusting perceptions and thoughts. You manipulate the libido in these ways. But guess who? What entities happen to have a problem with pedophilia? That's reality. I'm not going to let them escape. You can falsify memory. You can create stimulations. You can create sensations. You can make me think in these ways. You can do all these things day in and day out. I will continuously make sure that you know that you're going to have to create a fantasy of yours to escape from reality. And then when they try to say, no, it's you when you were a kid, I'm sorry. I'm not going to let you live that escapism too. It's not me when I was a kid. It's what you guys do to me today. You do the pedophilia type of torture, and this is what you're going to do continuously. And they're like, oh, you're going to lose what? That you guys don't do the pedophilia type of torture. It's me when I was a child, or you matched it, or no. Not only you manipulate me currently, you manipulate my memories, And they've tried to even manipulate one, the like when I'm older, when I'm because it's too much to try to say no, it's you when you're a kid. So they try to do something when I'm a young adult. That's why you hear the noise campaign. It's part of the things to try to break you down. So to this perp who is trying to box in this fantasy, I'm not gonna let you escape.
Able to impose any information on the brain of a person, presumably by some kind of waves, which in the mind take the form of voices, thoughts and images in imagination. In addition to this kind of implanting information that they need, they manipulate the psyche so that the information is written into your memory. Then by stimulating the certain regions in the brain they can retrieve this information and present it as your own memory. This is the conclusion that can be made judging by the influence they have been making on me with their psychotronic weapons, for example artificial thoughts, imagination, and mental torture.
The targets were forced to perform homosexual acts on each other against their will and religion in order not to be beaten or killed. This is a common breakdown tactic of belief systems and the human will. In no-touch torture the techniques are more psychologically specialized for each target. Most common examples include homosexual targets that are forced with voices that are derogatory to their lifestyle and similar mental images. Almost all targets are forced to view child pornography in their minds.
They're trying to take over my mind, putting thoughts of pedophilia. It's disgusting. They take this whole thing into account so much and make it so dramatic. It is dramatic. It's somebody trying to end my life. It's somebody trying to end who I am as a person. It's somebody trying to take over my mind, putting thoughts of pedophilia. This disgusting things. You saw where I was going with that first word. Disgusting things that I don't even want to talk about because it makes me sick. I don't even like those words in my mind. But it is what it is. So I have no choice now but to acknowledge that there are people in my surroundings or whatever they're doing. I don't know how they do it. I don't care. I don't know if it's through.
I can be free from this torture. Every day has been a miracle of survival. I also experience what is referred to as malodorance. This is the alteration of the smell sensation so that I am often made to smell various things, including smoke, burning, dirty diaper, or baby powder, which they sometimes combine with the pedophilia type of torture, including the threat of. I also often see highly disturbing pornographic images and videos, including highly disturbing pedophilia type of images and videos when I close.
Realized that was impost, so I thought, look at this losers, don't know how to put me down and they are doing this. So I told them that I know what you are trying to do, and I started laughing, and then I said again out loud, you'll never take my will, ass. So just to show them that I meant what I said, I kept playing with my dog, and even though that attacks continue, I don't let them get me. Today they continue with the programming of perversion, but this time they are aiming in the use. A people, better said young people, also children and
any part of the body. This technology can be used to sexually manipulate the target. It can make the target feel sexual arousal, or it can sort of turn off the
occasion. I was told I was going to be shot in the face, and it was an older guy. He was like really, really disgruntled and pissed off. Yeah, you're going to get shot in the face. Sound like an angry ass old person. Then a couple of days later, a female said the same thing. Don't get shot in the face. Stupid shit like that. But what I really noticed is with the voice of skull, it's a bunch of females. And I'm like, bro, really? You're not a woman. What real woman would stalk another female or sit?
I am currently a speech-language pathologist working in private practice with young children. I had a 7-year-old client who has autism, and she was the most significantly affected of all of my clients. I eventually had to tell this client to go to another clinic, and they used her to threaten the most torture in me as well as their most extreme forms of torture. For several months, she would cry and scream horribly during our therapy sessions despite having a great day at school. This was highly unusual behavior for her, as she usually behaved very well during her therapy sessions and had been making incredible progress on all of her therapy goals. This was used to threaten extreme torture on me, making me scream and cry, etc. They would make the kids act out the kinds of torture that would later be done on me. For example, they would also sometimes make her bite her hand, threatening to make me bite my hands, as they often do. One day, she had a large, severe bite mark on her arm. She has also grabbed her crotch, saying, "Ow," and this was used to threaten me with severe sexual torture. One day, I also observed her gasping for air a few times in the same way that I do when I am being more severely suffocated. The suffocation had been in a mild state for a while up until this point. Many of their torture methods are cyclical in severity. Right after I saw this child being suffocated, then I began to experience very extreme suffocation all day, every day, for about 2 months straight, and that's also when they made it worse when I eat. Then I also work with a 4-year-old little girl with Down syndrome, as well as her 5-year-old sister who also has Down syndrome. I observed both of these girls suddenly grabbing their genitals in pain and verbalizing, "Ow." I observed this at least on 1 or 2 occasions for each of them during their separate sessions. During one session, I observed one of my 3-year-old clients suddenly grab his crotch and lean forward in his chair. And then he made a frightening grimace of severe pain. I asked him what was wrong and if he needed to use the restroom, but he said no to having to use the restroom and was not able to verbalize anything more due to his language delay. He looked puzzled and bewildered. Even though I had stated that it was time to do more work right before this incident, I quickly just let him play another game, and he quickly returned to his joyful, happy self again. In other sessions, he has also grabbed his crotch and said, "Ow," while looking up at me.
8 billion brains on the planet, potentially. Read them. Marines. Underwater.
How do you explain this is happening to Len? How do you rationalize?
Him in private. Hold on.
Okay, yeah.
Can I talk? Here's how I do my studies, and I wanted to find the commonalities, but I have to throw away the ones I'm uncertain about that are true targets. You know, maybe there's natural schizophrenia, there's a whole bunch of chemical imbalances,
Right,
etc.
right.
These weapons can actually induce and mimic all those diseases and effects. But the conversations, the scripts they're called, are always the same. I've heard them all. They're slightly tailored for each individual, but they're scripts. And they're meant to confuse the very derogatory. That's just typical breakdown. If you've ever been to boot camp, you're a worm until you're part of the team. And why would you want to break down the ego of that person? To rebuild it. So this gets into creating Manchurian candidates, split personality spies, and information couriers, people that will carry the V2K. So they'll say, we're the Russian government, we're the Chinese government, we're evil aliens, we're Satan's, satanic ritual abuse. And I've heard all the stories. One guy believed it was some 14-year-old kid with an Xbox that lived next door. The trickery really is that great when you're under hypnosis that people will believe something other than a massive government could do this. And so anyway, my interview with Len, he very well described a typical breakdown script that's used on almost all the TI victims. TI stands for targeted individuals. Torture scripts. I mean, Kabul These are typical CIA torture scripts. I mean, Kubark manual. And they do good cop, bad cop interrogation called Jeff and Mutt, and they go right through the list, right? Just textbook. So whoever the handlers are on the other side of this synthetic telepathy, they're following the handbook perfectly.
Had sexual contact with a 2-year-old and a 6-year-old. He was simply fired. One employee purchased sexually explicit videos of young girls filmed by their mothers. He resigned. One employee estimated that he had viewed up to 1,400 sexually abusive images of children while on agency assignments. Not sure what actions, if any, were taken by him. One contractor arranged for sex with an undercover FBI agent. I think that you mentioned that. Posing as a child, he had his contract revoked. One CIA staffer was charged with child sexual crimes, and the employee was also under investigation for mishandling classified material. The CIA did not answer detailed questions, saying only that the agency takes all allegations of possible criminal misconduct committed by personnel seriously. So you're saying the reason why they didn't take this more seriously, why there weren't actual prosecutions that were carried out, is because what they were trying to not only protect their agency, but trying to protect the country from being compromised in some way by our foreign enemies who would use this information in some kind of bribery scheme?
I think that it's actually quite worse than that. In my personal opinion, my analysis based on this is that they know that we're already compromised, and they don't want to have to admit how compromised we are by these foreign adversaries, by these foreign intelligence agencies. They know we're compromised, and they don't want it all spilling out into court. So they'll go over to FBI, they'll go over to DOJ and say, hey, don't worry, we're taking care of this. Hey, don't worry, we'll take care of this guy. Don't worry about that. Don't ask any questions. We don't want those secrets coming out in court. We know the FBI does this time and again, just like in the Kyle Rittenhouse case, where the FBI was able to testify off camera, completely in silent, and then their testimony was stricken from the record. So we couldn't even get a public review of what the transcript was, what the FBI testimony was in the Kyle Rittenhouse case, because we know they were conducting surveillance of this entire thing. It's the exact same thing. And I was told behind the scenes in that case, they said, we don't want our operations spilling out into court and people talking about it on YouTube. That's a direct quote.
Wow. Okay, here's more from this, and we'll finish this and then move on to the Ghislaine Maxwell trial. But sexual crimes involving children, says BuzzFeed, including the viewing of images of abuse, have been uncovered at other agencies that handle sensitive information. In a November 2009 report, the Department of Defense acknowledged that dozens of Pentagon staff members or contractors had such images. In 2014, the Inspector General of the Intelligence Community found that 2 officials from the National Reconnaissance Office, which oversees America's spy satellites, acknowledged viewing images of child sexual abuse during polygraph examinations. This is so disturbing. At a symposium in 2016, Daniel Payne, a top Pentagon security official, said that when workers' computers were examined, the amount of child porn I see is just unbelievable. Is this something that is happening for whatever reason with more frequency in our intelligence agencies, or is this something that is more pervasive in the general population than I originally realized? I mean, what's going on here? This is so bizarre. Remember, it's so evil.
Allie, we're told, and when I was put through recruitment into the intel community, you're put through polygraphs, you're put through a rigorous selection process. Why aren't these people weeded out? Why are so many pedophiles allowed to be given top-level security clearance? Remember, these aren't just people walking in off the street and saying, hey, can I get hired? Can I get a job? You're put through an extremely rigorous background check screening process. It's called an SSBI, single scope background investigation. There are people, they interview you, they interview your family, they interview your contacts, they go through your online footprint, they go through everything. So why is it that when they're going through these footprints, they're not checking, these digital footprints, they're not checking for so many pedophiles getting through their ranks? If it were up to me, you need to go into Congress, and Congress needs to launch a brand new church committee, number one, to talk about domestic surveillance operations, but number two, to ask the question, why are there so many pedophiles sitting?
That's the thing. The rest of the cases, they were sent back to the CIA to handle them internally. Well, don't worry, Stephen. I think a few of them were fired.
Yeah, well, the rest
Oh,
is that's the thing. The rest of the cases, they were sent back to the CIA to handle them internally, whatever the hell that.
Where do you
about
think
that.
you
The
work?
CIA.
That must mean there is such a lack of fearing any sort of accountability. For crying out loud, while on assignment, 1,400? You must have not been doing any job.
Well, even if you had to look at it to make sure you knew what it was, don't you just need to look at one?
Right.
You're like, I better check the other 1,399
double-checking.
just to be safe.
Yes, I better
Each
check the other
file.
1,300 labeled tax things.
Unbelievable.
Oh my goodness.
And the guy with the 6-year-old?
Disgusting.
Twice.
Yeah, twice.
Twice with the 6-year-old.
So and here's the scariest part, out of the 10 instances that are described in the report, only one person was ever charged with anything.
Yeah.
With anything. Comment below. Do you guys know this story? This should be catnip for the media, right? Think about it. You've got this lewd behavior. You've got corruption at the highest levels of government, right? Aaron Brockovich, something about fake tits and tap water.
Yeah.
The CIA, raping children and sexually assaulting children, and they're not being prosecuted? Where are you?
Had sexual contact with a 2-year-old and a 6-year-old. He